folks, it's Crystalline. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be talking about some ways to prepare your plants for if you are leaving your space for a vacation or for the holidays or for any reason. Now, I know a lot of us aren't traveling right now since it is the pandemic, and I want to make sure that I say that my partner and I have been isolating and staying away from others for the past 2 weeks, or probably longer than that, honestly. But anytime we leave, we want to make sure that we have been isolating from the outside world for 2 weeks and not leaving our apartment for any unnecessary reason. And you shouldn't be leaving your apartment for any unnecessary reasons anyway, but we wanted to be extra safe because we really did want to be able to spend the holidays with our families, and so it was really important for us to be able to create the time to quarantine for 2 weeks before being around any potentially vulnerable family members. These are some things that you can do to prepare your plants for leaving. Before we get into today's video, I do want to mention that I am wearing my other Plant Me Ashley shirt. This is the white one that has a bit different of colors on the logo. And this is the back of the shirt. And other than that, I'm just wearing sweatpants and have my hair tied up because I am doing a lot of plant chores today to prepare my plants for leaving. So let's go ahead and get into the video. So I have all of these plants here with me today that I have brought into this room from other rooms of the apartment, because this is the plant room, effectively. And this is the room that was my bedroom prior to my roommate moving out, and it has a south-facing window so it gets the best light in my apartment, and it's also really the only room that I can keep plants in to keep safe from my cats. So I've brought all of these plants from wherever they normally live, and I've brought them into this room so that they will be safe and happy while I am gone. I'm gonna go through each of these plants and I'm going to check to see if it needs watered. And if it needs watered, I'm going to put it in this box. This is a tote that I will be using for a propagation box. So stay tuned for my propagation box video when I come back from visiting my family. So if it needs watered, I'm going to put it in that tote, but before I water it, I'm going to see if it needs any pruning or if I'm noticing any pest problems or anything like that. I've moved all of these plants in here for various different reasons. So one big reason that I moved my plants in here is because I want to keep them safe from my cats, and I want to keep my cats safe from the plants that may be toxic to them while I am away from my apartment. As I mentioned in my non-toxic to cats video, I do like to keep any plants in this room when I don't want my cats to have access to them. Another big reason that I brought all of these plants in this room is because, like I mentioned, it has a south-facing window. So this room gets the best light in my apartment, and since it is winter time, I do have to supplement the lighting for a lot of my other plants with grow lights. And since I won't be home, I won't be able to turn my grow lights on and off, and I don't just want to leave them on while I'm gone. I've decided to bring the plants in here so that they could get as much light as they possibly can while I am away. Another reason that I brought all of these plants in here is because one of the ways to help the humidity level in your space is to group your plants together. So I don't normally have a problem with humidity, but that's because I am running my shower and things like that. And since I won't be able to put a humidifier on and I don't have enough humidifiers to cover my entire apartment, I want to bring my plants in here so that the humidity in this room is higher and the plants are a little happier while I'm away. Another reason I wanted to do this is because some of these plants don't get as much attention as other plants because of where they're located in my apartment. So now is a good time for me to see if any of the leaves need cleaned off from dust, and if there's any pests or any fungal or bacterial issues happening with any of my plants. And so this gives me a chance to look through all of them and make sure that they are in the best shape possible. Okay, so I'm going to show you each of the plants that I have brought in here to care for, and I'll talk a little bit about what I am doing for each of those plants. Like I mentioned, I have this tote that I am going to use to water my plants, and I'm going to put any of the plants that need watered in here once I've checked them for any other issues, such as pests or dying leaves or anything that might need pruning. So the first plant I have is this Calathea orbifolia. This is currently in our bedroom. This plant does not need as much light. I have been holding off on watering my plants until I can tell for sure that they do need watered, because it is winter and they are using less water because they are not growing as fast and the light is not as bright. So this Calathea is getting pretty droopy and the leaves are not very firm. So it is definitely time to water this Calathea. And I also just pulled off this dead leaf from it. So it's going in the watering tote. The next plants I have are these 2 pots of baby micans. And then there's also a Pilea peperomioides in this one. And they both just need watered. So they are going in the watering bucket. The next plant is this Pilea peperomioides. If you watched my least favorite plants of 2020 video, you would have seen this plant. But after moving it to a brighter location, it is already starting to do better in just the week or so that it has been since I moved it. And I can see a marked improvement in the plant's leaves, and I pruned off previously all of the dying leaves, but this one is starting to die. Since they're still green in the leaf, I'm not going to take it off. I'm just going to leave it on since I've removed quite a few other leaves from it, but it does need watered. Since it is in a higher light location now, I'm going to water it before I leave. The next plant I have is this Pearls and Jade pothos. This plant I did have shipped to me recently prior to the USPS being completely swamped with packages, but it has recovered from shipping and I just pulled off a dead leaf, but it is starting to wilt, which is a sign that it needs watered. And as I mentioned in my hanging baskets video yesterday, you can tell that a pothos needs watered when the leaves start to wilt. So this is starting to wilt, the soil is dry, so it is ready to be watered. I have this Hoya Crimson Princess. This plant does not seem to need to be watered. It seems like the leaves are still firm, but there are a few dying leaves that I am pulling off of it. And I am not going to water this since it does not seem to need watered yet, but it probably will need watered when I come back. So I'm just going to put it aside for now. The next plant I have is this Peperomia obtusifolia variegata. This plant is ready to be watered, but it doesn't look like there are any dying leaves or any issues with it, so I'm just gonna put it straight into the watering bucket. The next plant is this beautiful Monstera deliciosa. There are some leaves that are starting to die off at the bottom and they are fully yellowed, so I'm just going to go ahead and pull them off. And the nice thing about waiting until leaves are mostly dead is that you can just pull them off and you don't really need scissors or pruning shears or anything like that. But this Monstera definitely does need watered, and there is a root popping out, so this might need repotted actually. But I'm not going to do anything like that right before I leave, but I am going to water it, and I'll probably repot it when I get back. The next plant I have is this Philodendron Prince of Orange. It does not really feel like it needs watered. I think I will just put this in a lower light spot while I am gone and it won't need to be watered. I found some leaf debris, and other than that, it looks like this plant is good. So I think I will just put it over in a lower light location and see if it needs watered when I get back. The next plant I have is this Peperomia Ruby Ripple that I am trying to rehab. It was not in the best of shape, and I am learning that I am not so great at caring for Peperomia, but there are some dying leaves on here and I am going to go ahead and pull those off. But there is a ton of new growth, so I am happy to see that I am learning how to care for Peperomias and that I hopefully won't lose this one. I think I'm going to water this one because I do want to put it in a higher light location because it has been doing better in higher lighting. So I'm going to water this one. So the next plant I have is one of my Aglaonema Marias. And as you can see, it is really starting to lean. And I think that is because it was a bit further away from the window than it would have liked to have been. Since Aglaonemas are a great low light plant, I did want to keep this plant in my bedroom because there's only a north facing window in that room and it's not getting a ton of light, but I think even the Aglaonema was too far away from the lighting. But there was this yellowing leaf, so I am going to pull that off and this plant definitely needs watered. And I'm gonna leave it, pull this leaf off, and I'm going to water this plant. I might also stake it since it was leaning so much towards the light. And yeah, so this plant is going to be staked and watered. The next plant I have is my Hoya carnosa compacta. This plant is still growing well. It is still very happy, even though it's not in as bright of light as it would probably like. It's still putting out new leaves, but it does need watered, and a few leaves that aren't as happy. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull those off so that I can give the plant more energy to focus on the new leaves that it is putting out rather than these leaves that are not doing so well. And I'm going to water it. And like I said, since it likes to be in higher light, I'm going to leave it in some higher light and give it some light while I'm away. The next plant I want to talk about is this Scindapsus pictus exotica that I just repotted the other day. LeBron knocked this plant over this morning, so the soil came out of it. And this is not a plant that is non-toxic to cats, so I don't want to leave it where they can access it while I won't be home. So I am going to pack in the soil just a little bit since it was loosened so much. It doesn't need watered or anything. It's in this ceramic pot, so it doesn't dry out super quickly, but I am gonna leave it in this room since I can keep it away from the cats if it's in this room. My next plant is my Philodendron Moonlight. I rescued this plant from Trader Joe's, but it was planted only in peat, and I haven't wanted to repot it yet, so I am making sure that I let it dry out completely between waterings. And the peat is finally completely dried out, so I am going to water it, and I will probably again repot this plant whenever I get home. So the rest of the plants that I want to talk about are plants that I featured in my houseplants to use as alternatives to Christmas trees video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the string lights off of the two that I put lights on, and also take the festive wrapping off of the Norfolk pine so that it can be watered thoroughly and will be happy long after Christmas. So first, let's take a look at this Ficus elastica burgundy. So as you can see, I have the Christmas lights on here wrapped around it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take these lights off before I check to see if the plant needs watered or if there are any other issues that I need to know about with this plant. Okay, so now that I have the lights off, I just want to look to make sure there's no dying leaves, see if the leaves need cleaned or anything. And it definitely doesn't feel like this plant needs watered because the pot is still very heavy. So that tells me that the soil is not completely dried out yet. And this is a plant that you do want to make sure is dry before you water it, so I'm not going to give it any water, but I probably will stick it in the shower to clean the leaves off. And it'll get a little bit of watering from that, but not like a full thorough bottom watering. So this plant is going to get a shower after this video. Okay, so the next plant I have is this Monstera adansonii that I decorated with my battery powered string lights. So again, I'm going to take all of the lights off and check the plant out. Okay, so when I purchased this plant in Savannah, I did notice that it had a tie on it to keep the plant attached to this log stake, and it looks like the stems of these plants are starting to get a little squished by that tie, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut the tie off first. Okay, so this piece of plastic was wrapped around the plant, and while it did make for a nice arrangement of the plant, I think that this definitely was suffocating the plant a little bit or strangling or choking the plant a little bit, so I'm happy to take it off. Now we're going to go ahead and look at the plant and see if there are any issues that need to be dealt with. I do see some browning on the tips of the leaves, and I'm only going to take off the plant or the leaves right now that are not contributing anything to the plant. So any of the leaves that are completely browned or any of the leaves that are very clearly dead, I'm going to take off. This leaf isn't completely dead, but it was easy enough to just pull off, so it was ready to come off. I'm also pulling out any leaves that got trapped behind any of the aerial roots while this plant was growing. So this plant is definitely attaching its aerial roots to this log, which makes a lot of sense because monsteras are epiphytic plants and they do grow up trees in the wild. So I'm pulling out some of the leaves that got caught behind the aerial roots while the plant was strapped to this log. I'm also pulling off any of the leaves that are just broken at their stems. So since this leaf was broken above a node, it won't grow on its Since this leaf was broken above a node, it will not be able to regrow on its own, so I'm just going to toss it. Other than that, all of the leaves look pretty good. I do think this plant could use a thorough watering, so we are going to go ahead and water it. And the last plant that I want to talk about today is Freddie the Norfolk Pine. And Freddie is decorated to the nines with his Christmas decor, but this wrapping that he has around him makes it a little bit difficult to water him thoroughly. So I'm going to go ahead and take the wrapping off, but I'm going to try to take it off gently as to not injure it, and maybe I can put Freddie back into the wrapping once he is done being watered. Well, that came off very easily. So I'm just going to go ahead and set Freddie in this watering basket, and I'm going to go ahead and water all my plants. Okay, so since Freddie is so large and is taking up so much space in that container, I'm going to put him in his own saucer to water him. And I have found some other plants around my room that could use a watering, so I'm just going to go ahead and add those plants in here now. Okay, so now that I have all of the plants in here, I'm going to go ahead and start filling these with water. And I'm not sure what the most efficient way to fill this with water is going to be, so I am just going to use my watering can, and we'll see how efficient that seems to be. So the watering can is definitely not going to be efficient for any of the ones other than Freddie, but I'm going to go ahead and fill up Freddie's saucer with this watering can. So the vessel that I'm using is this interesting little vase thing that I got from Goodwill, and it holds a little bit more water than my watering can does, and it's not too heavy, so I'm gonna use this. I'm just gonna go fill this up a million times until I can get these baskets with enough water to water these plants. Okay, so my baskets are now full of water. And since some of my plants were a little bit dry, I did sprinkle a little bit of water on the top just to make sure that the bottom watering process could get started. But yeah, all of my plants are in here, and I'm just going to let them soak for a little bit and let them take up whatever water they need. And I'll keep coming back to check to see if any of them are done being watered, and also if any of them, or if any of the vessels that they're in need more water added. Okay, so my plants are all watered, and I'm going to leave them in these trays. I have dumped the water out from them so that they're not just sitting in the soil. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching me give my plants some love before I leave for a little bit. And if you have any questions about how to prepare your plants for when you're leaving for whatever, please let me know. And if you aren't already, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Thanks, everyone.